Good morning. Terry here again, in a little different setting. I'd like to talk about a theme that's intrigued me for years. About 5 years ago, I wrote a dissertation, a doctoral dissertation, that focused on baby boomers that were leaving churches and exploring different reasons why people were leaving churches at that stage of life, at my stage of life. That's my cohort, my generation. And that has been kind of in my mind a lot, wondering about that. What would cause so many people to leave churches in their middle and moving toward their later decades of life? Well, I've taken that up again. I'm wondering about it again. As a matter of fact, today I'll finish the first draft of a book that I'm planning on publishing later this year. And it has lots of work yet. First draft is done, but at least 3 times more through and all that kind of thing. But focusing back in again on people that are leaving churches. And a couple of stats. One that really caught my attention a while ago. It says that in the decade between 2004 and 2014, so in 10 years, 3.8 million per year left churches. So during that decade, every year, 3.8 million people left churches every year. And that number's too big. I couldn't get my head around it, so I knocked that down into daily numbers, and it turns out that right around 10,000 people left out the back doors of their local churches every day. That's an arena full of people, 10,000 people leaving churches every day. Now, certainly many of them are younger people that might have grown up in youth groups and get distracted by things and wander off, but of the 10,000 people who have been leaving churches, 1,850 have been baby boomers. That means every day, 1,850 baby boomers leave churches. Now, many were very involved for years and decades, had become leaders and very strong parts of their community. 1,850 people leaving every day. Now, if there are 1,000 people, there are 1,000 stories that go behind the leavings. Some of them might be bored by things, some of them have a crisis of faith, and so on. But there's another study that looked at these folks by a man named Alan Jameson and his group. And after his survey, he found that 92% of the people leaving churches were continuing their faith journey apart from their churches. So it's not like people are losing their faith. It's not like they're sick of trying to live a life that connects with God. But I've been wondering and paying attention to the people who have been leaving churches, especially the segment that I call healthy, growing people leaving healthy, thriving churches. It's people that I talk with, research, stories that I read, that say there's this stream of people that are leaving out the back doors of churches in their middle and later decades of life, and they don't have a problem with the church in particular. It's like they don't have a conflict that's going on. They're healthy and growing themselves, and they're leaving. So I've been exploring that and wondering about that. What phenomenon, what's going on there? Is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? And I've been thinking about it for a while, long enough now, until I thought I need to pull some ideas together, put them in a book format, and see how people respond to it. If it makes sense, if the research fits with their experience, if it resonates with them. Maybe the people who have left churches or know people that are leaving churches, and you really can't quite put your finger on it. And what I'm exploring and wondering about, how many of those people are leaving churches because of their growth? That somehow they're bumping into something, that there's something that church, some needs are or nurturing that churches are not meeting or cannot meet. So that's been my exploration. Even saying, is there good news in people leaving churches? Now, that's a radical thought for me, for others. Or maybe changing the terms a little bit and say, what good news might we find in that? Could it be that churches are doing their job, helping people grow to the point where they're growing beyond the ability of churches to support? So I am intrigued by that, enough that it's captured my heart, it's captured my attention, it's taking time and so on. So it's a life-giving thing for me. It's having me wondering and hoping that I can come alongside some of these people that are leaving churches. They might call themselves spiritual but not religious, which I don't quite feel comfortable with that term. But coming up alongside and say, let's talk. Let's seek to understand what this means. There's a group called Barna Research Group that calls these folks de-churched, those that were once deeply involved in church and are no longer involved, so they've been de-churched. That doesn't mean they're anti-church. That doesn't mean that they have been ejected out by the church. It just means they were once churched and they no longer are. And maybe rather than think about how to restore them to where they were before they left, what about thinking about how do we meet their needs, or how do we release them? How do we encourage them to keep growing? So it's a good experience for me. And maybe you have some friends, or maybe yourself, that you've become de-churched. Oh, and one other note, I have as well, at least for this stage of my life. So I'm thinking about it for myself. I'm wondering about it for friends, some family members. How might I come up alongside people and just say, hey, we have something in common. We are living de-churched at this stage of our life. What might that mean? Why might that be? How might we keep engaged in our faith? How might we continue to be growing Christ followers in the way of Jesus? So that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm thinking about. And that's the book that I'll start editing the first time around, beginning on Monday. So thank you for listening. Talk to you next week.